grew up here in the outskirts of Phoenix, actually out in the country down southeast. But I knew some fellows that were really instrumental in the development of the county, like Mr. John Creel. I knew him for years, and Mr. Walter Danley. Mr. Danley had a furniture business here, and the Kings that had King Hardware. I worked for them when I was going to college. Yeah, I've been here a long time. Like I said, we lived way out in the country. I rode the school bus about 40 miles to get to school. I lived about 2 miles from the school, but we went all over the Uchiana area,
Right.
picking up other students. Anything I have to say about Walton County is usually related to the school system, because I was a part of the Walton County school system for over 50 years.
Wow.
I started to school when I was 6 years old in 1946, and I retired in 1998 as principal of West Puniac Elementary School. I always enjoyed school. I was glad to see that school bus come. I rode the bus, and I have some memories of riding that bus over some muddy roads. Sometimes it'd get stuck, maybe slip in the ditch, and we wouldn't make it to school that day. But I had 2 brothers, one older than me and one younger than me, and one sister, and she was the baby. And we lived a pretty simple life. My dad worked at a local hardware store for a long time. Didn't make much money, but he spent every bit he made on his family. He didn't waste any. And he was probably the hardest working man I ever knew. I've seen a lot of changes over the years. Like I said, I saw a lot of, there were a lot of muddy roads in the county, dirt roads, unpaved, until I got grown. I graduated from Walton High School in 1958, and I finished college in 1962 and started teaching at Darlington Junior High School. I taught English 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and 7th grade math at Darlington Junior High School. Quite an experience. I was qualified to teach English, and the English language made perfect sense to me. But it was difficult to explain to anybody else and make them understand the difference between an adjective and an adverb, or a noun and a pronoun, and lots of them didn't care what the difference was. So that was kind of, but Mr. Baldwin was our superintendent, Mr. John Baldwin. I give him credit for saving my career, because they passed a bill in the legislature that every high school in the state of Florida must offer driver education in the school. Well, Mr. Baldwin called me in at the end of that first year and told me that if I'd go to Tallahassee that summer and get certified to teach driver's ed, he'd give me that job. So I started in '63 teaching driver education, and I taught a lot of the folks here in the county to drive. And then after 9 years of teaching, I got into school administration. I went back to school at Fort Rucker. Troy State University had a branch at Fort Rucker, and I drove up there and back 2 nights a week for 2 years. Got my master's degree in school administration, and got on as principal of Paxton School. And I was in school administration for 25 years. Got elected superintendent in 1976 and served 4 years as superintendent of schools. And then a good friend of me took over, Teddy DeShazo, got that job, but he gave me a job at the middle school, and I was principal there for a while. And I had a good career in education. the people of Walton County have been real good to me. They gave me a job when I needed a job and helped me along. Mr. King was, he would advance me a little if I needed to buy some books or pay tuition or something at Troy. He would advance me and then let me pay it back as I worked. And that was very generous of him, and it was very helpful to me. I love Walton County. I have always lived here. I like the people, and I like the climate, and the fishing and hunting and everything about Walton County. To me, it's the best. It was kind of interesting. In 1963 and 64, I was teaching driver education one semester at Paxton and one semester at Freeport. When I was teaching at Freeport, we would drive down across the bay, across that drawbridge down there, and drive up and down those roads along the beach. There was nothing between Highway 98 and the Gulf of Mexico except some paved streets and a little beach house once in a while. There was almost nothing. That was in 63 and 64. Well, in 76 to 80, I was superintendent of schools, and sometimes we had to borrow money to pay the teachers, and then we had to wait for St. Joe Paper Company to pay their taxes to pay the bank. Now, with the tax base they have south of the bay, they can build a school and pay cash for it.
Right.
So I've seen a lot of change on that. One time we did a transportation survey, and there was 100 students that lived across the bay in Walton County. And most of them went to school either at Point Washington or they rode a bus to Freeport and went to school. Now I think they have 4 or 5 schools down there, and they're all filled up.
Right.
So been a lot of growth in Walton County over the past 50 or 60 years. No, I went to school 12 years on the same site. The old Maud Saunders Elementary School. Back then, it was just called Walton Elementary School, I guess, because I remember when they named it Maud Saunders Elementary. Miss Maud Saunders was a pioneer educator in Walton County. She was a teacher and I think an administrator at some time. I remember when they named that school for her. But then when I got out of the 6th grade, I just went across the street to the old high school, and that's where I went to high school for until I finished in the 12th grade. But when I was superintendent of schools, there was still 5 or 6 schools in the county, these junior high schools that had K through 8 or 9. Darlington was K through 9, and I believe Liberty and Gaskin and Valley View and Freeport were all about the same. And then there was a little school down there at Point Washington called it Bay Elementary School. I worked with the school system, like I said, as a teacher and a principal and superintendent, and then after I retired, I substituted as a bus driver for 2 years. And that was quite a challenge. Like I said, Walton County's been good to me, and I've enjoyed living here. When I was in school, going to school, Mr. Alec Caswell was a school superintendent, and I later, when I graduated from high school, I later worked with him in construction. He had a construction business. He employed a lot of Walton County residents. We built schools then. And then Mr. John Frank Bloodworth was the superintendent. I believe I can remember I was in the 4th grade with his son David, and Mr. Bloodworth was superintendent at that time. And then following him was Mr. Gray Wilson. And Mr. Wilson was superintendent when I graduated from high school. And he later worked with the State Department of Education. He was very helpful to us in Walton County. He gave us a connection to the county, state school organization or administration. And let's see, after Mr. Wilson, Mr. Baldwin, John Baldwin, was superintendent for 20 years, I believe, and that was most of my career in the school system was when he was superintendent, and I followed him, and then Teddy DeShazo followed me, and he served a couple of terms, and let's see, Zane Sunday came in after Teddy, and after Zane was, I believe Mr. Bloodworth came in after Zane, either Mr. Bloodworth or Coy Yates. And James King was appointed superintendent and served a while. I believe Yates was superintendent when Carleen Anderson got elected, and she served, I believe she served 12 years. Mm-hmm. And Carleen was my assistant principal when I was principal at West Puniac Elementary School, and she was a very good administrator. She was excellent. When I decided to retire, I retired the last day of January in 1998, and we had a Christmas party just prior to that, and I told the crowd there that that's the first time I had ever given anybody my job as a present for Christmas present, but I was giving it to Miss Anderson. I knew they were going to hire her to take my place as principal, and she served as principal out there for several years before she got into the politics and became superintendent. And as far as I'm concerned, she was a very good principal and a very good superintendent.
Yes.
And then, of course, after her, Mr. Hughes, and he's doing an outstanding job. Another politician that was very instrumental in the development of the county and the growth of actually in the state was Mr. Tom Beasley. Mr. Beasley was our state representative. He had the job that Brad just came out of, and he was elected Speaker of the House twice, I believe, 2 different times. He was a very strong legislator and helped this area a good bit. Mr. Beasley, and he's Bobby Beasley's uncle. I don't know, you probably knew that, yeah. But he was a pioneer in the development of this part of the country. And my dad worked with Fisher Hardware Company, and that was a thriving business back in the 50s. I don't know if you remember Fisher Hardware.
Yes, sir.
But it was the largest hardware company in this area, and my dad worked with them 25 years, and Mr. Stinson was the owner of that, and he was one of the pillars of the community too. He was a real good businessman. Of course, the Campbells had the Campbell hardware business, and the Campbell boys, there was 4 or 5 of them, they all were in that hardware business, and they had what they call building supply business. And there was a family here called Jennings, W.K. Jennings. They had a department store there on Front Street.
Right.
And Mr. Jennings, Melville Jennings, was a good businessman, and Mr. Marvel Warren. Mr. Warren had a service drugstore. He was a pharmacist, and he was also a mayor of Defuniak. That's another thing. We had trains, passenger train service through here back when I was young. One of the earliest memories that I had an uncle. His name was Kelly. His name was Curtis Kelly, he got killed in World War II. And one of the earliest memories of my childhood, we came up one night and met the train when they brought his body home from the military. And that was a sad event. But I remember it. I was probably 4 or 5 years old when that took place. Mr. G.G. Blake, he was also one of the mayors of Funiac, and he was the depot agent. He protected that lake yard down there like it was his own property. He was fond of that, and if anybody referred to it as a pond, it made him mad. He said that was a lake. But he was a colorful character, and he was one of the founders of this area. If it hadn't been for public education, I wouldn't be anything. That and the Lord has taken care of me.